In this video, we're going to be talking about the song setup mode in depth. We've already covered a few of the more basic controls in this section, but I wanted to go ahead and cover everything so that we know how to use these functions going forward in the course. That way we're all on the same page whenever we start talking about more advanced things like MIDI note sequencing. This section is used for controlling different parts of a session, things like browsing, editing basic MIDI clips and events, and also has assignable user macros on the bottom pads, which let you configure custom controls for your Studio One projects. This lets you map practically anything you want to be controlled by the pads on the controller. The song setup mode controls that we'll be focusing on are all the illuminated pads that you could see on the main section of the device. You have these 4 yellow pads along the top, and then all the assignable user macros on pads 1 through 8. First, we have a tap tempo control, which we've covered previously. You can tap this pad to dial in the speed that you want for your project, so you can adjust the tempo. And then we also have pad number 13, which will open and close the browser inside of the interface, as shown in the last video. Now let's move down to the next series of pads that are used for selecting and editing events. Pads 9 and pads 10. Pads 9 to 10 in the song setup mode are used to control event clips within your sequencer. We'll be talking about MIDI editing in depth in future videos, but I wanted to cover these basic controls now as they are part of the song setup menu. So in the sequencer, I have 2 blank MIDI clips loaded up, and let's say that I wanted to select a clip. I could use the left and right buttons to select the different MIDI clips inside my timeline. And make sure your browser is closed whenever you do this, or else the left and right clips will adjust elements within the browser instead of selecting things within the sequencer. Let's go ahead and move over to our first clip here. So let's just move to the left. And then I can either duplicate that one by selecting pad number 9, or I can delete that clip by pressing pad number 10. And that goes for both of these devices. I could duplicate that by pressing pad number 9, and then I can delete that clip. So these pads are used for quickly arranging the audio and MIDI clips within your projects. If I wanted to select multiple events at the same time, I could press Shift and then the left and right buttons to select the events that I want to edit. So let's press the Shift button, and then let's move over to the left to select both of those clips, and then we could duplicate them, or we could delete the clips. So that covers the first set of controls. We can now move to the lower section of the song setup mode to show off these assignable user macros. So pads 1 through 8 are assignable user functions. You can think of them as customizable macro controls. So if there's a specific control that you keep using over and over inside of the software, you can map it to one of these pads to speed up your workflow. To edit these functions, we can pull up the MIDI controller editor. So the way I like to do this is go down to the mixer section. So you want to go over here and show the external devices, and then go over to the Atom, select the drop-down arrow, and press Edit. And this will show our external device editor window. And from here you can see all the different assignable user functions. So we have things like mute, so we could press the pad number 3, and it will mute the channel. There's a solo button on pad number 4. And then we also have things like the insert pattern on pad number 5, so I can go into my sequencer, make sure my cursor is at the beginning, and press pad number 5. And it will insert a new MIDI clip into my sequencer. The best part about this menu, and what sets the Atom controller apart from the other control surfaces, is that you can assign any pad to practically any control within the software. This is great because it allows you to customize the Atom controller to your workflow, rather than relying on someone else's predefined workflow that they've set up for a specific control surface. So you can really get deep into it and optimize your workflow by assigning different things to different pads within the software. So say we want to reassign the duplicate button, for example, which is pad number 1 in this case, because we found we weren't using it that often. We could swap that out for practically anything else inside of the software. So what you do for this is you just move over to the pad, and then you right-click on it and press Assign Command. And then now you see this menu that's popped up, which gives you all these different assignable controls. So from here we have things like the different tool windows, removing tracks, export mixdown, undo all, undo last loop. So there's a lot of really specific controls that you can map, which are different things you might use all the time in Studio One depending on your workflow. So you can go in and map these pads to whatever control you want within the software. So you could optimize these macros so they're more focused on MIDI and drum editing, or you could optimize the macros so they're more for mixing and mastering. It just depends on your Studio One workflow, and you can adjust everything accordingly. So just for example, let's go ahead and swap this over. Let's say we're using the options menu a lot, that we worked with lots of different control surfaces and lots of different audio interfaces. So we want to have a quick and easy way to access the options menu. So what we can do is just go up to this menu and search options and type in option. We can select that from this menu and press OK. And then now whenever I press pad number 1, it'll pop up the options menu. So that's just one example of a control that we could map to these pads that's a bit more unusual, but you could really go in and go through that menu and assign it to practically whatever you'd like. You also have the option to go in and change the pad color as well. You can just click on the pad that you want to edit inside the editor, and then you could select the color that you'd like. So you could either do a green, and you can now see that that's changed down on the control interface, or we could change it to a red, for example. So just click on it and change it to a red. Let's say you made some mapping assignments that you didn't like and you want to revert everything back to its default state. What you can do is you can reset this so that it goes back to its initialized patch. So you can go ahead and just close it out, go to this drop-down menu, and then press the reset button. And then you can see on the controller that everything has reset. So now if we go back to the song setup mode, you can see that our pad color has changed back. And then if we go over here, you can see that all of the controls have defaulted back to what they were initially. So now instead of being an option control, it's back to being a duplicate control on pad number 1. So these macros can be really helpful to speed up your editing process. So if you find you keep using a key command or a feature over and over, you can map it to one of the pads in the Atom controller to speed up your workflow. So that's all for this video on the song setup mode. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you in the next one.